I hope everyone is back again, and I want to save time as much as possible, so just jump into the next session on building components, furniture, musical instruments, artifacts, manufacturing, and design. And I already saw our keynote speaker, Yoav Liberman, so I will hand over to you, and we are happy to see your talk. So please open your microphone and start the screen sharing.
Good morning, everybody. From the East Coast of the United States, I apologize for the sounds of the barking dog. We have a new puppy. I want to thank you for inviting me, and I hope to have a good discussion and interest you in the subject of reclaimed wood as a source of material for design. I will share my screen. Before I delve into the reclaimed wood subject, I would like to give homage to the subject that allows us to have reclaimed wood, which are the trees themselves. Trees are absolutely majestic and deserve our utmost respect as facilitators of life. They bestow us with a bounty of gifts, shade, fruit, beauty, and oxygen. They serve as a habitat and a source of nutrients for so many living beings. Then, when their time comes, they can become our homes, furniture, and many other objects of use and beauty. I'm going to show you some pictures of trees that I included in my work. I came to love and be interested in reclaimed wood as a maker, as an architect. There are a few reasons. First of all, there's the environmental reason to preserve the beauty and the value of that material, prevent it from being tossed to the dumpster and decomposed. There is the aesthetic reason for using reclaimed wood. And I will go through a few of the purposes that I found in it. The obvious are that we need to make sure that it doesn't end up in the landfill, and it happened to furniture, and it happened to building components. In my research and my own work as a maker, I have used it excessively throughout the years, and a lot of the reasons are listed here in this slide. The environmental, the aesthetic, the esteem, which is the narrative or the story that reclaimed wood possess, and there's of course the economy element. Many of us associate reclaimed wood as barn wood, but that's not the case. Not always the case. In this slide, I'm going to list the prime category of reclaimed wood as I see it, which I call it heritage reclaimed wood, and these are pieces of lumber that convey a story. They have provenance. They have quality, beauty, and in some cases rarity. Some heritage reclaimed wood will possess all of these attributes. Some will have a few of them. And let's talk about them with this example. For instance, this is an interior design work done in an old bank that turned into a restaurant. The designer wanted to pay homage to the previous use of that space. And so they included this reclaimed wood here in the teller partition. But they also used reclaimed wood here at the long table. So that table is made from pristine reclaimed timber, white oak, from either an industrial building, an old industrial building, or a barn. And to recreate a table like that from newly grown wood, it would be very difficult. And so the heritage reclaim gives this space an immense value. This is a case of a heritage reclaimed wood that convey a story. In this case, it's a nostalgia. It's an apartment building in Brooklyn, New York, where the owner remembered fondly the days as a child spending in a barn in the Midwest. And he commissioned from his interior designer this loft area within the house that sort of commemorate or remind him of his childhood. And so this is reclaimed wood from barn that was brought into this apartment. And that is the nostalgic or the narrative aspect. Those reclaimed wood that I associate with heritage reclaimed are harvested from significant buildings, old barns, old mill buildings. We have seen example of using reclaimed wood as complete timber, logs, hewn beams, and sawn beams. As is, this is a slide of a log of wood that is in the process of being hewn with an adze, and those markings carry a lot of currency if you want to augment space with that kind of heritage reclaim. So that's the excavation or reclaiming of an old barn. And here are pictures of reclaiming hewn timber from an old industrial building that has been demolished, but the wood is being preserved. That wood then arrive to a new space, a new use, and it would make that space look either more authentic or more beautiful. It depends on the requirements of the user. So heritage reclaim might possess the rarity of the grain, the old timber, old growth timber that shows very tight growth rings and also very tight or very impressive coloration. So that's an attribute of heritage reclaimed wood. It might also include, in that case, it's a beetle or lava infested beam that had been kiln dried and been harvested from an old building, but that particular aesthetic cannot be reproduced with newly growth wood. So that's what gives this its kick, if you want. Some heritage reclaimed wood are just obsolete. I mean, it's a species of wood that is no longer with us. In this case, it's American chestnut. These trees have been, for the most part, been extinct, and so only reclaimed wood can bring you into the furniture or interior that particular species. Heritage reclaimed wood is also being used and harvested, if you want, around the world. These are pictures of teak beams in India that, if they cannot be put into the same use in a new construction, they are being milled and turned into furniture. So those furniture are coming with the value of a timber that had been had a previous life, is of century old. And that's something that the customers will appreciate for those reasons. Reclaimed wood also is associated with weathering coloration, and many would appreciate those strike of gray and brown in their interior or on furniture. So that's the aspect of time, and what it does to wood is a factor in giving the reclaimed wood its value. And we go into the esteem or the narrative of reclaimed wood. Here we see the iconic water tower of New York City, and that wood originally was mostly redwood and some type of cedar. When these staves from the water towers reach their lifespan, they can be harvested and put into furniture. And so a person can live in New York City and order a piece of furniture that is local and have this like significant of being used before. The wood had been used before. This piece by a Dutch designer is by Piet Heinak. Is made of redwood from New York City water tower, and he made this table 2, this coffee table 2. So the coloration, the imperfection are actually an advantage in those heritage pieces coming from heritage wood. Wendy Mariama paid homage to the poaching of ivory by building a piece that is built from heritage reclaimed wood, which she reclaimed from an old gun manufacturer in California that got rid of their gun stock from Clark walnut. So that wood had been repurposed, reclaimed in order to make a piece that protests against the killing of elephants. So that's another part of the reclaimed wood with heritage. Then another piece, Marie Antoinette said to have loved a particular oak tree that grew in Versailles. That oak tree that had a few hundred years of life fell in a storm in, I believe, in 1999. And the wood had been salvaged, sliced, and then put into a piece of furniture made by French designer Maria Perguet. And in that piece, we have a slice of history. We have an encapsulation of a time period that is surrounded by modern design. So the reclaimed wood, the heritage reclaimed wood, is then the focal point in that piece. The sources for heritage reclaimed wood can also include recovered reclaimed. These are logs that sank while in transport hundreds years ago or 100 years ago, and then being hoisted up and repurposed, sawn, kiln dried, and put into use. So the quality of that timber cannot surpass by newly harvested wood because of the old growth forests. George Goodwin, an American entrepreneur, started this business, and now they produce bald cypresses. They use heart pine or southern yellow pine and other species that are pristine in their look and aesthetic. Kurt Eichhorn, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, works in Bali, Indonesia, and he repurposed old fisherman boats made from tropical hardwoods, turned them into furniture. So those furnitures, as they arrive, as somebody buys the furniture, they know the furniture timber has story, has personality, if you want. Of course, we see the traces of coloration or color that the original boat was painted with. Here's a project of mine where I repurposed, on one hand, timber from an old mill building that was demolished, and steel legs from an American desk from the 1940s. So when you work with reclaimed wood, you need to negotiate size, you need to negotiate defects, but the benefits, the uptake of that is that you receive material that comes with story, with beauty, with chronicles, and I mean, you look at those tight growth ring as they manifest into the lines on that rail that I built for that table. I'm going to talk briefly about this project. This is reclaimed live oak. Live oak was the prime material for building ships, and that's the material that gave the American Navy its start. The shipyard that ordered live oak in 200 years ago forgot about the cachet of that live oak. It was buried underground, and then in 2012, by accident, that timber was salvaged in Boston, and nowadays it is being used as a reclaimed material, in this case as benches in another historical part of Boston. It's the Cambridge Common. So reclaimed wood comes to life after being used in one way, being purposed for a particular purpose, and then coming into it or having another life. In this case, these are brandy staves from a winery in Israel, circa 1900. And they're being repurposed into later on to furniture. Railroad cars, railroad beds carry a lot of scars of many, many years of use in abuse. But once they're sliced, you can get from one beam 3 different manifestation of look or aesthetic. One, we have very cracked, weathered. Then we have the mid-core. And then we have the deep core, which is pristine. In this case, it's white oak from an Austrian railroad cars that Gilad Ergaz is repurposing and reusing. And these are some of his projects. Reclaimed wood can be painted or can originally be painted, and that is being rearranged in a collage on a new piece or used as raw on the surfaces of kitchen or kitchen furniture and other house furniture. In this case, this is an interesting story. This is reclaimed wood from mushroom beds. Mushrooms are grown in beds. The wood is being, after some time, being reduced to thickness that cannot be sustained, meaning that the organic material in the soil consume the early growth and leaves the late growth. And then you get this beautiful topography. That's mushroom bed reclaimed wood. It's been this kind of topography of the reclaimed wood can then be incorporated into furniture. And the appeal is obvious, rustic, dramatic. Common reclaim is a different category of reclaim. This is a category of inexpensive, mundane, pallet wood, timber that has not been, doesn't have a lot of value, but you can use it for all kind of projects. So these are example of common reclaim, demolished floorboard, reels from cables, boxes, side of the road finds. And you can, in this case, it's our chicken coop. I utilize a lot of different common reclaimed wood to build it. And then you can see doors, you can see panels. And then once you homogenize it with the color of paint, it serves its bare purpose. Nothing to write home about, but it's very purposeful. This is a piece of mine that was built from street found kitchen doors and trays from that were discarded by the Harvard Museum of Natural History. I also found some legs on the street. I am a dumpster diver, if you haven't noticed in these pictures. And so once you think about this piece, you want to take the common reclaim and you want to celebrate it, you can find the solution. In this case, a lot of sketching, a lot of design work, and all those pieces will come together as one. Sometimes with reclaimed wood and common reclaimed wood, you need to compensate for the lack of dimension, and you just add material, and then you build the piece, And now I'm working on, in these pictures, you see the evolution, the returning of those found and boring leg into something that is a little bit more interesting, including carving. And then there will come the part where I do additional carving on the buttresses that allow me to lift up the piece. And then, as I mentioned before, sometimes when you work with reclaimed wood, using opaque paint would homogenize the eclecticism of the different segment that you use. It just tie everything together with some accent of maybe varnished wood, or in this case, it's sapelli mahogany, but the rest of the piece is whatever, birch and maple and pine, but the paint just tie everything together. We have reclaimed wood. A third category is scraps. Scraps as a leftover material from processing wood or from selling wood. Scraps from fireplace bin. Scraps from lumberyard. And in this case, just as simple as a block of scrap that became a knife stand, a stand for one individual knife. Scraps for cutting boards. So in this case, these are religious artifacts, scenery and nativity scenes from Jerusalem, where scraps of olive wood are used to build these objects. Scraps are used by toy makers, wooden toy makers. This is Heather Dawson, who uses scraps to turn beautiful vases. The size, of course, determine the size of the scrap determines the size of the project. But artists love to work with limitation, and limitation sometimes can bring an amazing result. This is James McNabb, who makes art by using scraps of walnut and a bandsaw to make usable furniture or art pieces. This is a scene of a modern city, a skyscraper scene. Again, we go back to Pete Hein, who uses mosaic, small pieces of scrap to build furniture. And now I want to talk about using reclaimed wood within the structural domain. Before that, just a few more pictures of using scraps as art. This Laura uses leftover salvage material from hurricane sandy demolished building to build those beautiful pieces of art. And now I'm going into the structural use of reclaimed wood and ways to make it build structural components. So we all recognize the use of scrap pieces in construction of panels. This is one of the workbenches that I built, made from an old bunk bed. So all the components are re-amalgamated or amalgamated together to make panels. These are arrangements to be considered of scrap in order to make an aesthetic, beautiful new panels. All these are just, there are many other options to use scraps in a beautiful way. This is a table made from pallet wood. Irene Ferry uses that kind of quilt, wooden quilt if you want, to make surfaces. These are all reclaimed wood from pellets. Brian Vershitz uses reclaimed wood in order to make art. Different colors, different types of wood. Sometimes they're colored, painted. In the structural reclaimed, we all know that we can make one beam from segment of thinner material glued together, laminated. we can also think about ways to make this, to make a beam from shorter pieces and longer pieces, like in this case, shorter and at the top, longer at the bottom, in order to mitigate the tension. And here we mitigate compression. We can connect two short pieces of reclaimed wood to make longer beams with keys, such as the one I did here on that bed. We can use a key in between two parts in a hidden way, and include a groove here in order to create a shadow line, and to prevent us noticing, say, if there was a glue seam that kind of cracked. We don't want to see the crack in between the two parts, so we use that or actually it's not fake. It's a seam that takes the eyes away from the crack, but into a shadow, a defined shadow line. You can see this is the back part of the beam connected with a key and screws. And in the front, you would see those two grooves. You would not know that this was, that beam was made of two parts. And that is the explanation why we use that kind of groove. If we didn't, we might see a crack, but once you put a groove, the shadow takes over. And that's another image. And here we have a detailed focal point that is added in the middle of the composite beam, which both hides, but also hides the connection, but also a direct visual interest into that area. So you can see this is a laminated part. My Jack Mach, a furniture maker, is using stacked up strips of walnut in order to make a beam that will become the legs of his furniture. And so you see the aesthetic of the reclaim is also, in this case, comes into play into the engineering of the piece. Salvage and recover. These are massive pieces of reclaimed timber, or actually trees that are being repurposed for artistic reason or functional reason. This is the case of Mitch Ryerson, who has been commissioned by the city of Boston to turn this dead tree into a shade over the bench. This is before and this is after. This is a walnut bowl that I made from a piece of walnut from a scrap bin. The fact that you have a focal point here at that part of the eye, the knot, is an advantage for the artist. Who, if I wasn't intervening, this piece would end up in the fire, in the fireplace. And so we have that piece. So that's salvaged. There's a lot of trees, especially here and now in North America. Ash trees are dying in their millions, and because of the infestation of the ash emerald borer, those trees can receive new life before the rot. And my friend Dan Marsh, who is also a colleague of mine, is having in his upstate New York a whole operation where he mills those dead ash trees and turn them into all kind of projects, outdoor project, but also indoor projects. Urban lumber is a new and upcoming field of finding wood and purposing wood within our cities and our suburban areas. Trees fall in storm, or they need to be removed for development reason. And then there are local companies. These are not the commercial lumberyard. They will cherry pick the tree from your neighbor's yard, and then they will hoist it, dry it, and allow you or the makers, other makers, to use it. They sell it to be used for local furniture. These are some of those colossal timbers are being purposed into live edge furniture. If a tree is from a New York setting and then the lumber is being used in a New York apartment, there is an aspect of locality that has a lot of attraction to both designers and users. I will, let's see.
We have 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left.
Oh, great, great. So I will conclude with one of my recent projects. It's a reclaim from a beam that came from an old farmhouse. The beam was tossed into this dumpster. And I looked into the dumpster and I saw this flaky piece of massive wood. And at first I wasn't sure if it is infested with any sort of termite or carpenter ants. But I took my chances because the beauty of that, the terrain, to me, it looks almost like surreal, this feather-like or texture. So I did not have yet a purpose for it, but I said it's so interestingly aesthetic that I want to check it out. I cleaned this beam, and then I started sketching. So in this case, I have, and I'm kind of revealing my process here as a designer. I noticed that the beam bottom part is actually more solid than the top. So for me, it was a process where I wanted to distill it, to sort of like reduce it from bottom to top. And as I go from the surface to the skies, if you want, the piece becomes more cleaned out or purified, if you want. And that was also, I also had some aesthetic input from the fact that I worked near the city of New York in the periphery, and the skyscraper of the city influenced my work. So this is the beam. And by the way, this is my friend Steph Rocknick, who is a sculptor, and I have commissioned her to work on the wings at the top of the piece. With the router, I reduced that beam gradually. I stepped it up, and from the raw and rough to the sublime and pristine at the top. And I was researching wing designs, Art Deco wing design, and that led to the shape of the wings at the top of that particular piece. Well, we had incorporated work with machines, but also hand tools. And you can see some of the process here. The piece sits on a concrete slab, and then it sort of ascends up. And as it ascends up, it's being reduced, and the core wood is exposed more and more. It has a chamber in the middle, in its heart, which is an old street found mailbox. And then that you can see here, this is where it was placed at some point. It's the Saks Fifth Avenue department store. And so if I want to take this piece as an example of the use of reclaimed wood, and in this case, it's heritage reclaim. This beam had been in the house for hundreds of years, and it has aesthetic value that is cannot be surpassed by newly lumber, unless you, of course, introduce this beam to insects, to let them work on it for many years. And so I would I don't think that we have the time to talk about the ways of finding and buying and treating reclaimed wood, unless I'm allowed to talk about it for a little bit more.
Very shortly, maybe a minute, then we have to jump over to the next.
So buying reclaimed wood the places where you can buy reclaimed wood are getting more and more abundant in the developed and world and the developing world. There are merchants and there are reclaimers that know that there's a good market for that, so they are knowingly contacting mill building that go through demolition, and they harvested the best of the crop from those facilities. So they then take those beams, they extract all metal parts in a very meticulous process, and then they run them through kilns. Why they run them through kiln for the second time? To make sure that there won't be any insect larva present there. Otherwise, the makers who are buying that material will not be able to use them in good faith. We don't want the clients to discover some work of worms later on. So this is a kiln in a local reclaimed wood operation, and a mill that is just in front of the kiln. The mill, many times the reclaimed wood operation will buy beams from farmhouses, barn, and so on, mill them, and then kiln dry them. And they will have stacks of different species, different ages, different looks. And for us, small-scale makers, Craigslist are a good source for buying reclaimed wood. And sometimes you would get raw lumber, some you get scraps of different types. These are all Craigslist sourced. Side of the road, a lot of time people would toss. There are websites these days that allow makers to communicate and exchange free material. One of them is Free Cycle. It's an I don't know if it's international, but it's a great source for giving and gifting and collecting material for use. These are just pictures that I took over the years of side of the roads. Some of those side of the roads actually have fantastic lumber. This gray and nothing to look at table actually is one solid piece of mahogany top. It's an English table that arrived to the U.S. at some point and then had his use, and then the owners did not know what they have and they put it on the street. That is, I would say, the conclusion of my talk. I wrote more about this in my book, Working Reclaimed Wood, and I'm happy to hear any questions that we have from the audience.
Yoav, many thanks for this really incredible talk you gave, these really very nice pictures. Unfortunately, we took a little bit longer than predicted, so I would ask all participants using the questions and answers function you have in Zoom, so you can raise the questions and comments there, and you can type in your answers there, so we can save some time in between.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks a lot once again.